Hello again, everybody. Tonight I am making pizza. So right now I have 8 cups of all-purpose flour. You can use whatever flour you have. You can also cut it with some wheat flour if you want to. I'm using 8 cups. This will make 3 very large pizzas because we have a lot of mouths to feed. If I'm doing just one pizza, on those rare occasions, I just do 2.5 to 3 cups of flour. So to my flour, I'm adding about 2.5 teaspoons of instant yeast. If you use an active dry yeast rather than instant or rapid rise, then you need to dissolve it in your water. Let it sit in your water for about 5 minutes. I'm also putting in about 2.5 teaspoons of salt. The method is the same. Give that just a quick stir. And then to my water, about 3 3/4 cups of warm water. We might need more, but this is just to start. So to this, I'm going to add about 4 or 5 teaspoons of sugar. You could use honey. I am also adding a little bit of oil. I'm only going to add about a tablespoon. You could leave it out. The oil just helps to soften up your dough. So if you leave it out, your crust will be chewier, crisper, etc. Dissolve your sugar, and then back to the mixer. Anytime you do dough in the mixer, use your dough hook attachment. You can absolutely do this by hand. Before I turn this on, so I'm not talking over it, I'm going to pour my water just very slowly as the mixer is running on low speed, the very first speed. Once there's no more dry flour, I'll turn it up to speed 2 and let it go for 6 or 7 minutes.
Isn't gonna fall.
Okay.
Mama, I'm Batman.
Okay. And I will add any extra flour.
Henry has his ring on.
Nope.
He'll be Spider-Man.
Okay. I will add any extra flour or water as needed. Ooh, I'm gonna make a mess while I'm at it. Okay, my dough looks good. It's clearing the sides of the bowl, but it's still sticking to the bottom. Actually a fair amount, but it's also smooth and elastic, and that's what we're looking for. I'm gonna go to the table and we'll turn it out and divide it and let it rise. So I'm just doing this on my pastry cloth. Again, if you don't have one, just do it straight on your table. A little bit of flour just so it doesn't stick. I use this handy dandy spatula to scrape this out of my bowl. Use whatever you have. Now, if you have more time on your hands, this can rise for about an hour, or if you do it in the morning, in the fridge. You can do it in the morning and let it sit in the fridge. So we're just gonna work this just a little bit, just to bring everything together. And then, since I have so much, I'm dividing this into 3. I'm doing 3 very large pizzas. My pans have been sprayed. I have 2 16-inch pans. These do not have a non-stick coating on them. If yours have a non-stick coating, your baking time, your baking instructions are gonna be a little bit different. I also, in addition to my 2 pizza pans, I just have a regular cookie sheet, also not non-stick. These have all been sprayed with pan spray. So now I'm just gonna make these as even as possible. Stick those on my greased pans, oil the tops, and cover them and let them rise for about 25 minutes. If you have longer, do it longer. Otherwise, about 25 minutes is good. And then when you go to stretch these, if they're not stretching nicely for you, if it springs back too much, let them rest for another 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, moving on to our sauce. I just have an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. If you have more time, do a 14.5, 15 ounce, whatever the next size up is, and cook it down on your stove top. Simmer it for 15 or 20 minutes. But this works as well, just to let it sit. So, sorry. To this, all I do is add about 1/4 teaspoon of salt or so, and about 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic powder. I don't measure anything. I just go by what looks good. And then a tablespoon or so of dry basil. Well, maybe not quite a tablespoon, maybe half a tablespoon. Dry basil. If you use fresh, the best way to do it really is to put the fresh basil on after the pizza has baked. But you can also put the fresh basil right in your sauce and let it sit. So this just sits for as long as your pizza dough is rising. Or like I said, cook it on the stove for 15-20 minutes. I'm also going to preheat my oven right now to 500 degrees. If your pans have a nonstick coating, you'll need to do probably 425, maybe 450. It depends on your pans. If you know the maximum temperature of your pans, then you can go to that. But I can do 500 degrees on mine because my pans don't have a nonstick coating. Okay, so this one didn't record audio, so here we go, commentary style. My dough had rested for about 25 minutes. The next step is just to press it out all the way to the edge of the pan, keeping it as even as possible in thickness all the way around. And if your dough resists stretching, if it's springing back, let it sit for another 10 or 15 minutes before you try again. The next step that I do, which is optional, I just poke a lot of holes all over my crust with a fork, just because it helps keep any large air bubbles from forming in the oven. And then I will add my sauce. You add as much or as little as you like. Cheese next. Always cheese before toppings, especially as hot as we cook this. Otherwise, the cheese tends to dry out and potentially burn. If you're doing plain cheese pizza, go ahead and cook your crust first and then add your sauce and your cheese. If you have multiple pizzas, you can do 2 pizzas at once. You can have your cheese pizza on the bottom rack and then another pizza on the middle rack above it, and that will help protect the cheese as well. I'm just using a mozzarella. You use whatever you have, whatever you like. So once you have your cheese on, add whatever other toppings you want. So that was a sausage that just went on. It is fully cooked. Make sure that if you do any meat that is raw, that you cook it first. And then these will go into the oven together for maybe 10 minutes. If you want to use a pizza stone, preheat your pizza stone in your oven for 45 minutes to an hour. You can use the underside of a cookie sheet or pizza pan, sprinkle it with flour and cornmeal, and then build your pizza on top of that. Just don't pile on the toppings because you'll need to slide it off and onto your pizza stone. I have also done sourdough pizza crust. I believe it was from the King Arthur Flour website. When you're cooking 2 pizzas at once, when the crust of your pizza on the bottom is finished cooking, then you'll need to switch racks so that they both have equal time on the bottom of the oven. When I'm doing just one pizza, I put it on the bottom rack just to make sure the bottom crust gets cooked all the way through.